Have you ever felt completely lost right after what should have been a spiritual awakening? That deep silence swallowing your motivation, leaving you numb and disconnected, not because you're weak, but because something inside is breaking down. This is the harsh truth few will tell you. Awakening doesn't always ignite purpose. Sometimes it destroys the ego that once gave you direction, leaving you stranded in a void society doesn't want to acknowledge. You might feel trapped in this emptiness, exhausted and manipulated by your own mind, desperately searching for meaning that seems to have vanished. But ignoring this uncomfortable reality only drains your power more each day. Carl Jung called this the space between the death of the old self and the birth of the real you, a dark but essential passage where the shadow surfaces and transformation truly begins. In this video, you'll uncover why the usual good vibes advice is a trap, how embracing the darkness leads to authentic self-formation, and why the real awakening is not about hustle, but about living aligned with your soul's quiet truth. If you want to reclaim your strength and find your true purpose, keep watching. This is the forbidden knowledge your awakening depends on. There's a strange moment right after what people call spiritual awakening. You expect fireworks, a surge of motivation, a rush of energy pushing you forward. But instead, many feel silence. Not just any silence, but a profound, almost sacred stillness that sweeps through the soul like a quiet tide. It's not depression or failure. It's a sacred pause where everything you thought you wanted just dissolves. Imagine standing in the middle of a forest after a storm has passed. The air heavy, but still. That's this silence, uncomfortable, but pregnant with possibility. Why does this happen? Jung hints that awakening doesn't just open doors. It sometimes closes old rooms inside us. The motivations that drove us before suddenly lose their grip. The goals, the ambitions, the social approval we craved, they all feel hollow now. It's as if the ego is taking a back seat, and in that vacuum, motivation fueled by external validation disappears. Think about someone climbing a corporate ladder who suddenly questions why the ladder even exists. The familiar fuel evaporates, leaving a vacuum that can feel like being lost at sea. Now, this silence isn't some permanent void, but a necessary transformation. It's the soul retreating to rebuild itself, like a blacksmith forging new tools in a dark forge. This phase often triggers anxiety, restlessness, or confusion, because our mind resists emptiness. But what if this emptiness is exactly what you need? Instead of filling it with distractions, it asks you to sit with yourself and listen. For many, that's terrifying. In the U.S. workplace, for example, where busyness equals value, slowing down feels like failure. But this silence is the gateway to a new self. Let's take a practical step. Journaling during this silence can reveal hidden desires beneath the surface. Ask yourself, what parts of my motivation were just habits or expectations? Maybe your drive was tied to pleasing others or escaping pain, not authentic growth. Another example, meditate on your daily urges. Which ones still feel alive and true? Which are echoes? These exercises expose the shadow motivations hiding beneath your conscious mind. A crucial first step on this strange journey. This silence also forces a reckoning with loneliness. You might notice old friendships fading or social circles shifting because the person you are becoming doesn't fit those molds anymore. It's a kind of social exile that stings deeply. Picture a man who spent years building status in his industry, only to find that after awakening, the applause feels empty and the crowd distant. This loneliness is part of the sacred retreat, a pruning of inauthentic connections to make room for new ones aligned with your evolving self. But here's a tough truth few admit. This silence can feel like a death. The you knew is fading, and what's emerging is unknown and fragile. That discomfort can push many to numb out or rush back to old comforts. Yet, Jung teaches us this death is essential, like the caterpillar dissolving before it becomes a butterfly. How long will you resist this stillness? How long will you chase false motivation while the real transformation waits quietly? Think about your own experience. When did you last feel genuinely motivated without guilt, anxiety, or pressure? What if that motivation isn't loud or urgent but quiet, steady, and rooted deep in your soul's truth? This silence after awakening is a sacred invitation to find that. But will you answer? Or will you run back to the noise? And as this silence deepens, a new question emerges. a question that leads directly into what happens when the ego itself begins to crumble. What lies beyond motivation when the ego dies? That's the next step, the real crossroads. After spiritual awakening, many expect a surge of purpose and energy. Yet for sensitive seekers, awakening often strips away old illusions, leaving a hollow space inside. This emptiness is not despair but a quiet void where familiar motivations vanish. Carl Jung described this as the liminal zone between ego death and self-birth. In this phase, the ego, rooted in social approval and identity, begins to dissolve. The ego's collapse is disorienting. The familiar drives that once gave life meaning fade away, replaced by silence and stillness. Motivation fueled by external validation disappears, leaving a vast emptiness that feels like falling into darkness. Many mistake this for failure or crisis, but it is actually a necessary step in transformation. The ego must die to make way for authentic rebirth. This liminal space is where the old self loses its grip. The masks and roles people play lose their power, no longer holding the person captive. The ego's collapse challenges identity itself, removing the safety nets of familiar purpose. Without these, the seeker experiences both vulnerability and immense possibility. This void becomes the birthplace of true selfhood. Imagine someone whose entire worth depended on career success or social status. After awakening, these sources of meaning feel hollow and empty. This emptiness can be terrifying, but it is the soil in which a new, more authentic motivation will grow. The collapse of the ego clears space for deeper drives, rooted in soul rather than approval or achievement. In this phase, motivation is not lost but transformed. It no longer burns with anxious urgency or desperate need for validation. Instead, it simmers quietly, a subtle hum that calls toward presence and truth. The seeker learns to trust this new motivation, even if it is unfamiliar and slow to reveal itself. It is a motivation born not of ego, but of soul. This collapse of ego is a spiritual purification. Old attachments fall away, and with them, the compulsions that once drove behavior. The emptiness that follows is sacred, a blank canvas where the self can be recreated from the inside out. This process is often painful, but essential. Without it, transformation cannot happen. Carl Jung's psychology shows that this phase is part of the individuation process, the soul's journey toward wholeness. The gap between ego death and self-birth is a psychological no man's land, where nothing familiar remains. But in this darkness, the potential for genuine growth is greatest. The collapse of the ego is the gateway to deeper self-awareness. Ultimately, the emptiness left by the ego's collapse is not a void to fear, but a space to honor. It holds the seeds of a new, soul-led motivation that emerges quietly but powerfully. The seeker learns to navigate this liminal space, trusting the silence and waiting for the authentic self to arise and lead. After the ego collapses, the soul enters a phase of sacred exhaustion. This is not mere tiredness but a deep, transformative pause. Like a caterpillar melting inside its chrysalis, the soul dissolves old patterns to prepare for rebirth. This phase is often misunderstood as regression or failure, yet it is an essential part of individuation, the process of becoming whole and authentic. During this sacred exhaustion, motivation may feel absent. The urge to act, achieve, or prove oneself quiets, replaced by a need to simply be. It is a withdrawal from the frantic pace of life, a turning inward toward the self. The soul is digesting its transformation, integrating the collapse of ego and the emptiness that followed. This pause is necessary for healing and growth. Many fear this stage because it feels like stagnation, yet it is fertile ground where the new self can emerge. Just as the caterpillar seems lifeless before becoming a butterfly, the soul appears dormant. This stillness is not emptiness but a powerful gestation. The soul is reassembling, layer by layer, beneath the surface of conscious awareness. Sacred exhaustion demands surrender. The seeker must relinquish control and allow the process to unfold naturally. Resisting this phase prolongs suffering and confusion. Instead, embracing the pause opens the door to deeper insight and renewal. It teaches patience and trust in the slow, often invisible work of transformation. Physically and emotionally, this phase may manifest as fatigue, disinterest, or disconnection. Spiritually, it feels like a dark night of the soul, but it is important to remember, this descent into stillness is a sacred rite of passage. It strips away superficial energy to reveal the essence beneath. The soul is preparing for a more authentic life. Psychologically, sacred exhaustion helps integrate the shadow and unconscious aspects of the self. The psyche reorganizes itself around new values and purpose. Old coping mechanisms and identities dissolve, making room for something deeper. This phase often feels isolating, but it is part of a collective human experience of transformation. As this chrysalis phase ends, new motivation begins to stir quietly. It is softer, wiser, less driven by external pressures. This motivation flows from soul alignment rather than ego ambition. The individual emerges with a sense of purpose rooted in authenticity and presence, ready to live a life that honors their true self. In essence, the chrysalis of sacred exhaustion is the heart of transformation. It is the pause between death and rebirth, where the soul melts and reshapes itself. Although difficult, this phase is a profound gift. It prepares the seeker for a life of deeper meaning, where motivation is no longer a frantic fire but a steady, soulful flame. The intense pursuit of ego-driven goals often leads to exhaustion and collapse. Carl Jung named this phenomenon enantiodromia, where extreme energy swings into its opposite. This turning point is not failure, but a necessary transformation. When one chases external success relentlessly, a profound inner stillness often follows, signaling deep change. True growth arises from this tension between opposites. Enantiodromia teaches us that the ego cannot sustain itself indefinitely. The more it pushes for control and validation, the more it invites a counterforce. This counterforce is the soul's call to stillness and authenticity. Instead of fighting this shift, one must learn to flow with it. Resistance prolongs suffering. Acceptance opens the door to true transformation. Superficial positivity, the endless good vibes culture, cannot replace this dark, essential process. Transformation demands confronting shadow aspects, pain, and silence. It requires descending into uncomfortable depths, rather than staying in surface-level comfort. Jung emphasized that real change begins in darkness, where ego defenses fall away and the soul reveals itself. This oscillation between extremes is natural and necessary. The psyche balances itself by turning outward ambition into inward reflection. Enantiodromia is the psyche's way of restoring equilibrium. It prevents one-sidedness, forcing integration of hidden or denied parts. Without this, growth remains incomplete, stuck in imbalance or illusion. In practical terms, enantiodromia can manifest as burnout, disillusionment, or spiritual crisis. These moments feel destabilizing but are gateways to renewal. They invite deeper self-awareness and dismantle false identities. By embracing the paradox of opposites, one moves toward wholeness instead of fragmentation. Jung saw enantiodromia as part of individuation, the journey toward self-realization. This process requires humility, patience, and courage to face inner contradictions. It is a transformative dance between light and shadow, activity and rest, self and other. The ego's death is the soul's awakening. Ultimately, transformation through enantiodromia leads to balance and integration. One learns to hold opposing forces without being overwhelmed. The restless drive for control softens into a peaceful presence. Motivation arises not from striving, but from soulful alignment. This marks a new stage of authentic becoming. Enantiodromia challenges modern culture's obsession with constant productivity and positivity. It reminds us that growth involves cycles of expansion and contraction. True transformation is a spiral, not a straight line. By embracing opposites, we access deeper wisdom and a more profound motivation rooted in soul. The unconscious holds parts of ourselves that we often refuse to see, hidden fears, desires, and suppressed emotions. These shadow aspects linger beneath awareness, shaping behavior in unseen ways. Shadow work demands courage to face what we usually avoid. Rather than denying or repressing these elements, integration is necessary for true healing. This process is uncomfortable but transformative. When we resist the shadow, it gains power by operating unconsciously. It sabotages relationships, triggers emotional reactions, and distorts self-image. Ignoring these parts only deepens inner conflict and fragmentation. Integration means inviting the shadow into conscious dialogue, recognizing it as part of the whole self. This act of acceptance is a key step toward psychological wholeness. Carl Jung emphasized that the shadow is not inherently evil, but contains repressed qualities that are often misunderstood. These may include creativity, anger, or vulnerability, traits deemed unacceptable by societal norms. By embracing these disowned parts, we reclaim lost energy and authenticity. Shadow work reveals the complexity and depth of the psyche beyond surface identities. The journey into the unconscious is often painful because it exposes wounds and contradictions. It requires patience and self-compassion to sit with discomfort without judgment. As we bring light to shadow elements, they lose their power to control us. This illumination allows for integration, where previously fragmented aspects become coherent parts of self. Shadow work also improves our relationships by reducing projection, the tendency to attribute our disowned traits onto others. By owning our shadow, we stop blaming external sources for inner turmoil. This fosters empathy and deeper connection as we understand our shared human complexities. It shifts us from victimhood to responsibility and agency. Spiritually, integrating the shadow is essential for genuine growth. Many spiritual bypass the shadow, seeking only light and positivity, which limits transformation. True awakening requires embracing darkness as well as light. This balance nurtures maturity and resilience, enabling us to face life's challenges with authenticity. The unconscious, once integrated, becomes a source of wisdom and creativity. It enriches our inner world and expands self-awareness. Shadow work is ongoing, not a one-time event. It's a lifelong commitment to self-honesty and growth. Each encounter with the shadow deepens our capacity for love and acceptance. Ultimately, shadow work is a radical act of self-formation. It dismantles illusions and false personas to reveal the authentic core. This confrontation fosters wholeness and freedom, allowing us to live with integrity. By integrating the unconscious, we become more fully ourselves, complex, imperfect, and deeply alive. New motivation arises softly, like a gentle hum rather than a loud roar. It is no longer driven by external pressures or frantic urgency. Instead, it flows from a deep inner source, an alignment with truth and presence. This motivation feels calm yet powerful, subtle yet unwavering. It's a quiet compass that guides actions without anxiety or desperation. The ego's frantic grasping gives way to soul-led clarity. This shift in motivation reflects a transformation in consciousness. Where before drives came from fear of failure or need for approval, now actions emerge from authenticity. The self begins to lead, rooted in awareness rather than reaction. It recognizes what is truly meaningful, bypassing distractions and superficial goals. This inner guidance fosters a steady, purposeful path. Soul-led motivation embraces patience and trust in timing. It does not force outcomes or seek immediate results. Instead, it surrenders to the process, allowing things to unfold naturally. This trust in the flow reduces internal tension and fatigue. The hum of motivation is sustainable, nourishing rather than draining. It becomes a source of ongoing inspiration. Presence anchors this new drive. Instead of chasing external validation, the motivated self listens deeply to its own needs and values. This presence cultivates a sense of groundedness and peace amid challenges. Motivation arises from a place of being, not doing. It is an embodied knowing that guides decisions and actions with integrity. This motivation also respects limits and boundaries. It rejects hustle culture's relentless push and the exhaustion it breeds. Instead, it honors rest and balance as vital parts of the creative cycle. The soul-led drive integrates effort with ease, ambition with humility. This balance fosters long-term well-being and fulfillment. Unlike ego-driven urges, soul-led motivation fosters growth beyond personal gain. It aligns with purpose that transcends individual desires. This may manifest as service, creativity, or deepening self-expression. The motivation becomes a contribution, an offering from the self to the world. It's a call to live with meaning and connection. Importantly, this motivation resists external distractions and false urgencies. It discerns what truly matters amidst noise and chaos. The self's compass points toward authenticity rather than popularity or status. This discernment protects the soul's energy and focus. It cultivates resilience in the face of societal pressures. Ultimately, the emergence of soul-led motivation marks a new phase of self-mastery. It embodies quiet power and clarity rooted in inner truth. This motivation is both humble and profound, an enduring source of guidance and strength. It invites living aligned with the deepest self, beyond ego's fleeting demands. Life begins to speak in symbols, becoming a dialogue with the unseen forces within and beyond. This communication transcends logic, touching deeper layers of meaning and intuition. Actions are no longer rushed or forced by external demands. Instead, they emerge from a place of sacred devotion. Ambition fades into the background, replaced by a quiet but profound purpose. The soul leads, guiding one through subtle signs and inner wisdom. This shift marks a departure from the culture of hustle and constant striving. The frantic chase for success or approval loses its hold. Instead, one embraces a rhythm of being that honors rest, reflection, and depth. Productivity is no longer measured by visible output but by alignment with true values. Life becomes less about doing and more about becoming, an unfolding journey toward wholeness. This creates space for authentic growth. Devotion replaces ambition as the motivating force. This devotion is not religious dogma, but a heartfelt commitment to self-realization. It involves surrendering control and trusting the process of transformation. The pressure to prove oneself or to achieve external goals dissolves. Actions flow naturally, rooted in meaning and integrity. This allows for a more sustainable, fulfilling path that nourishes the soul. The old self, shaped by egoic drives and societal expectations, slowly burns away. This process can feel like loss or death, but it is necessary for rebirth. What emerges is a new self, more integrated and whole. This self is less concerned with appearances or approval, and more focused on truth and presence. The transformation is ongoing, a continuous becoming rather than a fixed destination. Living symbolically means seeing life as a tapestry of deeper patterns and connections. Everyday events, relationships, and challenges gain layered meanings. This perspective fosters greater awareness and mindfulness. One learns to listen to life's subtle messages and to respond with wisdom. This symbolic living cultivates resilience, as challenges become opportunities for growth and insight. This way of living rejects superficial success and embraces authenticity. It acknowledges that true fulfillment comes from within, not from external validation. The self learns to value depth over surface, essence over form. This alignment brings a profound sense of peace and satisfaction. Life becomes an art form, where each moment is imbued with significance and intention. Though this path may seem quiet and unnoticed by the world, it carries great power. The transformation radiates from within, influencing all aspects of life. It inspires others by example, demonstrating the strength of living aligned with the soul. This subtle power is enduring, unlike fleeting achievements or accolades. It is a testament to the resilience and depth of the human spirit. Ultimately, this stage is not the end of awakening, but its true beginning. It signals the birth of a mature self, whole, integrated, and deeply alive. The journey of becoming continues, now guided by wisdom and love rather than fear and ambition. This is the path of wholeness, where life is lived fully and symbolically, in harmony with the unseen forces that shape existence. You've seen the harsh reality behind spiritual awakening, the silence that isn't emptiness but a sacred pause, the collapse of ego illusions that strips away false motivations. This is not a breakdown, but a profound chrysalis moment, where your soul melts and prepares to emerge anew. The path is never smooth. Darkness and shadow must be faced, and the parts of yourself you've hidden away demand integration. Ask yourself now, will you settle for the shallow comfort of distraction, or will you dive into this uncomfortable transformation? Will you cling to the old ego that once gave you false purpose, or will you dare to embrace the quiet power of a soul-led life? This is where true freedom begins, not in chasing approval or external validation, but in aligning deeply with your inner truth, moving beyond hustle toward wholeness. If you're ready to break free from the invisible trap of lost motivation and surface as a stronger, more authentic self, then don't just watch, act. Subscribe and turn on notifications because the journey ahead is not for the faint-hearted. Share in the comments below. I'm breaking free to claim your commitment to this path. In the next video, we'll expose why modern society is designed to keep you lost and how you can reclaim your sovereignty in a world that wants to keep you small. Stay tuned because the truth you seek is just beginning to unfold.